Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Star Hearth Astrology, and I am here to talk about Leo season 2022. I had been doing my forecasts by the month, but as of right now, I'm going to go back to this because it feels better to kind of think of it as this encapsulated time of the sun's time in the different signs. So yeah, we kind of had a complicated Cancer season with lots of different vibes going on. Yeah, there was a lot of water, there was a lot of feelings. Now we're moving into Leo season and it will be dramatic. I think regardless of your chart, there's just a whole bunch of fireworks that go off in Leo season. So I'm excited to get into it and break those down for you. Okay, so on July 22nd, the sun goes into the sign of Leo and we begin Leo season. And the sun loves to be in Leo because that is the sign of its rulership. It gets the most resources in Leo season for the solar purpose, which is purpose, right? Which is our connection to our identity. And so the sun will be lighting up whatever area of your chart you have Leo in, and kind of really bringing the focus to that area. On the 23rd, on the weekend, we have Mercury that's already gone into Leo. Mercury went into Leo on Tuesday the 19th. Mercury trines Jupiter in Aries. And so we get this kind of like fiery burst. There's lots of enthusiasm when we have Mercury and Jupiter together in a fire sign. Or, I mean, they're in different fire signs, but right, they're both fiery. We've got lots of enthusiasm. So I think it's a really kind of fun weekend to come into. We have the moon in Gemini, quite playful, kind of egged on by that Leonine Mercury. So that's really sweet. On the 24th, we get Venus square to Jupiter. This is a square between the benefics. So there's kind of competing good things going on. Whether you're going to be more emotional with the kind of Venus piece in Cancer, more enthusiastic, right? It might be like laughing so hard you pee your pants. It's kind of how I'm feeling that one out. Okay, so that's all kind of fun. By Tuesday, we get a Mars-Mercury square. So that's going to be Tuesday the 26th. We have Mercury and Leo square Mars and Taurus. Mars-Mercury squares have fighting words. They have arguments. It is Mercury coming up with enthusiasm against Mars that is maybe dragging its feet or is really, kind of slow and steady wins the race in Taurus. And so that can be a little tricky interpersonally, right? Often we're going to see somebody is Mercury, somebody is Mars, we're working at cross purposes. We can't make things happen quite as fast as we would like to. So that is going to kind of introduce us into this week that is a little bit hairier. We've got these things building by the end of the first week of Leo season, which are quite crunchy. We have a Leo new moon that happens on Thursday the 28th. And so that Leo new moon is going to be the restart of the lunar cycle. It's going to be, right, this new beginning of a new storyline in the Leonine part of your chart. And it's going to be the revival of the lunar month. So it introduces us to a very, very different month than we had after the Cancer new moon, which happened at the end of June. So that's not the only thing that happens that day. So in the new moon chart, we also have Jupiter stationing retrograde at 8 degrees of Aries. Now it's from 8 degrees of Aries to 5 degrees of Leo. That means this new moon is in a trine to Jupiter, which is going to feel a lot better than what happened a month ago when we had a new moon in a square to Jupiter. And I think a lot of people were thinking that that was going to be nice in some way, but I think that was quite pinchy for a lot of people. I myself, I think, had a difficult month balancing the more Cancerian pieces of how do we tend to emotions, how do we tend to our families, and versus the Jupiterian pressure to be like, oh, it's nice, it's sunny, there's things happening, how do I make everything happen? Then, so we've got Jupiter stationing retrograde, so it's going to kind of sit at 8 degrees of Aries, and then it's going to move backwards, and it's going to still be in Aries until the end of October. So we're not about to lose it out of Aries. Also on the day of the new moon, we have Mercury square Uranus, which is a really swift plan change. So there is this very, very different tone for the month that hits us right at this new moon. We've got, Jupiter being supportive and really just parked at that degree. And then we have Mercury saying, everything that I was trying to do, now I have this radical insight, or I have this new inspiration. And so that can change. And so, right, when we've got these things happening on the same day as the new moon, it kind of gives them a more longevity over the course of the month. So we're kind of inspired after that. Now on Saturday, the 30th, Mercury is going to square Saturn. So that's going to be a little bit coming back down to Earth after that. Mercury is going to oppose Saturn. So after that square with Uranus, that was going to let's make a break for it. Now the opposition with Saturn is like, okay, wait, maybe that's not going to work. So that's going to be a little bit more of okay, let's figure out what this is all going to mean. And so there's a more sobering aspect to Saturday. Sunday, we have a number of things going on. So for one, we have the North Node conjoins Uranus. And so really we're going to be feeling that from the beginning of Leo season through this. Right, the North Node creates, wants everything manifested, wants everything in physical form, wants it all generated. And when it hits Uranus, the rebellious, the awakener, the rule breaker, the revolutionary, right? We're going to see that in really overblown ways. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the political sphere around this, but it's not calm. It's not Saturn. It's not, we saw this coming. It's kind of like, wow, that got out of control. And so we're kind of in these weeks of that got out of control. Now we have the Sun trine Jupiter on that same day. So that is very empowered, but sometimes we get so empowered that we get inflated with our own ideas and our own convictions. And then we do something a little bit crazy, like the North Node on Uranus. And suddenly we're in a very new situation because of the actions that we took. So yeah, so already, right, there's lots going on this month. The day after that Uranus hits the North Node, we have Mars conjoining Uranus and the North Node. So we really, even on July 31st, we have a triple conjunction. We're having this triple conjunction of Mars, our ability to take action and make it happen, Uranus, the awakener, the destroyer, the earth shaker, and the North Node being like, it's bigger is better. It all needs to happen in physical expression. So to say this is explosive would not be an overstatement. This is one of the most potent configurations, I think, in 2022, this weekend. And those three things piled up on top of each other. So I think it's not just going to be a weekend. We're going to be seeing the effects of this. And that's kind of this is the big storyline of Leo season. Just like last year, we've got all these things going through Leo. They are activating Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus, but Mars and the North Node are both in Taurus with Uranus this year in ways that they weren't last year. So it's pretty explosive. It's all gonna happen. The day after, I think there's this kind of softening because on August 2nd, we have Venus and Cancer sextiling the North Node and Uranus and Mars. There's like a little bit of this like softening and this urge to harmonize and to kind of bring things back. I think that's nice. Normally I wouldn't, think that those sextiles would be so significant, but I do like this kind of balm that happens. Not that it's going to fix everything, but it is just kind of, the initial burn cream over that. On Wednesday, the 3rd, we have Mercury, which by now is moving very, very quickly, is done with Leo and is into Virgo, the sign of Mercury's rulership and exaltation. We can do a lot of figuring stuff out in Virgo. So, yeah, and this first couple weeks of Mercury in Virgo is going to be great. This is Mercury's going to go retrograde in Virgo, but it doesn't enter the shadow of its retrograde until August 20th. So we've got, 2.5 weeks of using Mercury in Virgo to really analyze things and make plans and set things right and figure it out and communicate clearly and being able to do the kind of more meticulous work of it all. So I think that's really powerful and that's going to feel really nice. On the 7th, we have Venus in Cancer, trining Neptune in Pisces. There's some dreams, some creativity, some real imagination, some real potential for reconciliation, for rising above ourselves, rising above our problems. And at the same time, we have Mars square Saturn. So Mars that's just kind of, had this huge explosion with Uranus, right? Is going to move in and square Saturn and, right, have to face the consequences for what happened there, or at least do battle with the ones that would enforce the consequences. So if we are going to see riots and protesting, it's probably going to do pretty well for the rioters on the weekends of July 30th and 31st. We're going to see the police come and crack down on it the next weekend with that square from Saturn. Okay. On the 8th, we have Venus opposite Pluto. Painful, right? We are going to be seeing, I don't even want to say it, right? But I feel like what we've been seeing with the Pluto return of the United States and how it's affected the women of the United States, right? There is some battle around that, and Venus is going to face off with Pluto in that sphere. And so we might see some things in the news related to women's rights. On Wednesday, the 10th, we have the sun squaring the nodal axis. And that's really important because that really provides us with the midpoint between eclipses. This is really the moment to check in. We're halfway in between the eclipses of April and May and the eclipses of October and November. And so it's kind of like, okay, how have you been doing? How much work have you been doing on where you're trying to get, or the new thoughts that you're trying to integrate in those spaces? So, but that's also, right, like when we've got that square, it's, and when it's with the sun, right, we're going to take those things really personally, right? My progress is going to inform my sense of my identity. And so that's going to be really potent. And then we've got this other lunation. The Aquarius full moon happens the day after, on the 11th. And so, right, if it's happening the day after, It's going to mean that we are going to have a grand square between the sun, the moon, and the nodes. And it's happening at 19 degrees of the fixed sign. So you know who's also right there? Saturn and Uranus. So now we have a full moon conjunct Saturn square to Uranus on the north node. This is a doozy of a full moon, right? It is the crowning jewel after that Leo new moon. This one is a whopper. If you think back to that eclipse that we had, the May 16th eclipse, it's about as complicated as that one. It's just not an eclipse. So that's kind of the saving grace right there. But this is a culmination that is filled with people really digging in their heels and the stability, right? Like, you know, the moon conjunct Saturn, clinging to that sense of stability, but, you know, pushing against Uranus and the nodal story, right? It's at cross purposes of where we all feel we're going. So, right, we're also going to have the sun square to Uranus, right? This is a climactic make or break moment, and people are going to feel like that, and people are going to take actions that look like that's what they feel like. So this is definitely an intense lunation. Both of these lunations in Leo season are very, very intense. Now, happening the same day as the full moon is we have Venus entering Leo. So, right, it's kind of like, you know, she's walking into the building as the building is going up. And so that'll be interesting because she enters the fray. Now we have everybody in the fixed axes, right? She is going to be, with the exception of Jupiter, Venus will enter a fixed sign, and then, and Mercury moved out. Okay. Well, we've got Venus, Mars, Saturn, Uranus, the sun, the moon, all in fixed signs, right? All trying to steady the course, but largely at odds with each other. So that'll begin our process of Venus and Leo. Venus and Leo loves to pick sides. Well, she loves to have other people pick her side. So that'll be interesting to see how that shows up. And I think Venus and Leo has struggled the last couple of years with Saturn being in Aquarius and having to face off against Saturn, because Leo's always going to want things to be more special, more fun, more beautiful. And Saturn is kind of dampening that, asking you to be mature, be reasonable, take some perspective, don't be so extravagant, right? Which pretty much harshes the game for a Leo Venus. Okay. Then on the 14th, we have the sun opposite Saturn. So, right, we've got that window between the 11th and the 14th of the sun coming into contact with Uranus, having this insight, right? And then hitting that opposition with Saturn and, right, coming back down to Earth, trying to figure out what it looks like in practical terms, meeting with the consequences. Mars is going to trine Pluto the same day. So the actions we take about that, it's going to be really hard to gauge whether they are appropriate to the situation. Some of them will be not enough. Some of them will be too much. Then we have on the 18th, we have a kind of sweet little transit of Venus trine Jupiter, both in the fire signs. I feel like there's a lot of hope, there's fun, there's enthusiasm in that little trine. I think that's a real sweet spot in what is otherwise a fairly combative, unpredictable, larger than life month. And then on the 20th, we have Mercury entering the shadow of its coming retrograde. So it won't go retrograde until September 9th, but it's going to enter the shadow of the retrograde on August 20th. And you know what else happens on August 20th? Mars goes into Gemini. And Mars, when it goes into Gemini on August 20th, is not going to leave again until March 25th. So we have 7 months of Mars in Gemini. You are going to understand and be steeped in Mars in Gemini. And this, I think, on a collective level is going to look like info wars. I think we're going to see a lot of stuff about fake news and real news and deep fakes and we are turning the world of information into a war zone. And of course we are, because the US is headed into midterm elections, right? We'd expect to be seeing this anyway, right? And we're going to see it manifest personally, right? Mars, as the warlike maker of weapons in the Gemini realm of words and ideas, is going to use words and ideas as weapons. So I think it's going to be a really potent time for us to reflect on the words that we use, the connections that we make. I think we'll see a lot of stuff going on in social media over the next 7 months. I will make a separate video that kind of goes over all of the information of Mars in Gemini and its retrograde therein, and still trying to iron out the details on a kind of a group collective, kind of like a class, but also like community experience for Mars and Gemini. So more on that soon. Mars and Gemini can kind of be a spaz, right? If Mars helps us choose what we want and Gemini's default answer is everything, all of it, right? That makes it really hard to choose. And so there can be this kind of, it can look non-committal, it can get bored easily. It's not so great at making connections. And so it can be a little bit unpredictable and all over the place. Yeah, and I think we'll see kind of both ends of that extreme, because it will, Saturn's in Aquarius that whole time except the very, very end. And so it'll be receiving that nice sign-based trine with Saturn, hopefully grounding it a little bit, but it's also going to be making a sign-based square to Neptune, which will be blowing it out in the other direction. So we'll see that. On Sunday, the 21st, Mercury is going to oppose Neptune. So this is a great time for creativity, especially if Mercury has been dealing with the kind of nuts and bolts of the Virgo sphere, can kind of receive that visionary dream down from Neptune. Now it can also get caught up in delusional, right? We can see, right, if that's happening, it's going to be setting the stage for what the clarity of the retrograde will bring. Now, this retrograde of Mercury will involve multiple oppositions with Neptune. And so, right, we are turning the dream into reality. We're reflecting on the gifts of the visions and how they translate in a practical sense. Then finally on Monday, we have a trine between Mercury and Pluto. So Mercury and Pluto come into a trine. We may say more than we mean. We may reveal something. We might be kind of, might get really caught up in those ideas. And again, if they are in opposition to Neptune, we can't trust them to be literal. And with that, on the evening of the 22nd, the sun enters the sign of Virgo, and we begin a month anew. Okay. I wish you the best in this month. Hope you practice self-care, take lots of deep breaths, reach out to me if you want some personal clarity around these things. I'm going to be going on maternity leave at the end of September. probably through the rest of the year. And so if there's something that I can help you with before then, head to my website, check it out, book a reading. It would also be very helpful for me. Okay. Have a wonderful Leo season. Bye.